Hello guys, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to discuss about the laboratory procedures for preparing salts in case that the previous videos might be a bit confusing, okay? So this video will show you all the necessary steps that you need to write down in your exam to get complete marks. Alright, so let's take a look at this. So these are some of the example questions that could be asked from you in the exam, okay? So you'll be given the studying materials in your exam, and then you'll have to tell them what laboratory procedures that you're going to do, or you have to describe how you could obtain crystals. So for example, in this question, they're asking you to describe how you could obtain dry crystals of sodium chloride from pure dry sodium chloride solution. So this is your starting material, and you need to be able to tell them how. So for the second question, they told you that it's an insoluble salt, which is silver chloride, and your starting reaction is between copper 2 oxide and silver nitrate, and they ask you to describe what method will you use. And for the third question and the fourth question, you can read it, okay? It's the same. So I'm going to explain it by following this map, okay? So first of all, you need to determine whether the salt that they want you to prepare is soluble or insoluble. Now, if it was soluble, we're going to use a method of crystallization, and under soluble, we can separate it into two parts. The metals accept sodium, potassium, and ammonium, and then sodium, potassium, and ammonium. Okay, so if it was sodium, potassium, and ammonium, we're going to do acid-base titration, which will be in a separate video. This video is all about crystallization and precipitation. So for the metals, right, except sodium, potassium, and lithium, okay, we can also include lithium and calcium since they are highly reactive. So for this one, we can divide our metals into two parts, above hydrogen or below hydrogen, okay? So if it was above hydrogen, we can simply use metal plus acid reacts to give salt plus hydrogen gas, or metal carbonate plus acid reacts to give salt plus water plus carbon dioxide. For the metals below hydrogen, since they are very less reactive, since they are not reactive at all, we need to use an oxide of these metals, which will be metal oxide plus acid will react to give salt plus water. Now let's take a look at this, okay? So let's take a look at the crystallization, okay? And you can still use the same format for every similar preparation. Describe how a student could prepare zinc sulfate crystals from a solution of zinc or from a zinc metal, let's say, okay? So zinc is right here, right? Okay, so first you round it off. So you know that it is above hydrogen, which is not potassium, sodium, or lithium, or calcium. So you can use this equation, okay? Metal plus acid reacts to give salt plus hydrogen. So it would be helpful in exam just to write down a very quick equation itself. But this time we don't need an equation, so we can just follow it. So what you would do is add excess bases, right? So it's zinc, and the one that they're trying to ask us to prepare is sulfate. So our acid would be sulfuric acid, H2SO4. First, you put in zinc. Add excess base zinc into the acid, H2SO4. And afterwards, we need to heat it, okay, or stir the mixture by using a rod. But what we will do is, to make sure that the solution is saturated, we're going to keep adding in zinc until no more zinc can dissolve. So at one point when you keep adding, there will be a precipitate at the bottom. So if a precipitate starts to form, you know that your solution is excess. So what we're going to do in the next step is filter the excess precipitate, these ones, right? We're going to pour it down into a filter funnel. So we're going to pour it down into a filter funnel. So your precipitate here will be left in this filter funnel. So remember, this is called your residue, and this is called your filtrate. Alright, sorry for the bad handwriting. Alright, so what we'll do afterwards is, when you have this filtrate, you're going to heat it up to evaporate some water. Notice here that I write some water And why some water and not all of those water is because if we evaporate all water, we will only have powders, but we don't, we want crystals, okay? And after we evaporate some water, we're going to let the filtrate cool down naturally, okay? We're just going to leave it so cool down naturally and form crystals. Since the crystals will be wet, we are going to have to dry the crystals by using oven or filter paper or towel. All right, so try to write these down on your own, okay? Imagine this sheet in your head and then try to write them down, okay? That'll be a good practice. And this is a similar example, okay? Describe how a student could prepare copper 2 sulfate crystals from copper 2 oxide. So this is metals below hydrogen, right? This is not potassium, sodium, lithium, or calcium, and it is above, below hydrogen. So we're going to need to use an oxide, so copper 2 oxide. Copper 2 oxide plus, what do they want? Copper 2 sulfate, so obviously we're going to use sulfuric acid to form copper 2 sulfate and then water. It will be helpful to write down an equation, okay? Which falls into this category. Alright, so as usual, you will add your excess base, copper 2 oxide in acid, which is H2SO4, and then you can keep following down, okay? So keep adding copper 2 oxide until no more copper 2 oxide can dissolve. So the rest you can write it for the same and you'll get full marks. Alright. Now for the insoluble salts, right? What you need to do is find those soluble solutions and then mix them together. Okay, that's the method that we are going to use. So let's see, right? The question is asking you to prepare barium sulfate. Now barium sulfate is an insoluble salt, so we need to find two soluble solutions. So Ba is Ba2 plus, this is your cation. SO4 is your anion, which is SO4 2 minus. For the first compound, what you're going to do is attach NO3 minus nitrate to the cation. So you will get BaNO3 as your first compound. And for your second compound, it could be sodium, potassium, or ammonium attached to your sulfate ion. So let's use Na2SO4. Okay. So let's try to see an example how to write down the laboratory procedures. So from here, they're asking you to prepare barium sulfate, but in exam, if in this question they already gave you what solutions to use, so you don't actually need to figure this step out on your own. Okay, so they already told you what you should be using. So let's take a look at it. Okay. All right. So first step that you would do is simply mix your compound 1 and compound 2. In this case, it is what made from two solids, PaS, sodium sulfate, Na2SO4, and compound 2, which is your barium chloride, BaCO2. So just try to write down a very brief equation on your own so that you know what your insoluble precipitate is. So it will be BaCO2 plus Na2SO4. So you will get BaSO4 plus NaCl. So here you already got your insoluble precipitate BaSO4. Okay, so after you mix compound 1 and compound 2, the insoluble precipitate BaSO4 will be formed and you need to filter it. Okay, so filter the insoluble precipitate BaSO4. Since there was no heating or anything involved, the third step is important in precipitation reaction. You need to wash the precipitate with distilled water or deionized water and remove your impurities. And finally, as your last step, you need to dry the crystals by using an oven or a filter paper or a towel. Alright, that is all for the preparation of salts, and try these questions out for yourselves. Okay, but only thing that's not mentioned in this video today is the acid-base titration. Okay, if one of these has acid-base titrations, ignore it because you have to do it in a separate video. Alright, okay, that is all for today. I hope you find it helpful, and always try to imagine this map in your head and then practice writing down these laboratory procedures. Okay, that's all. Alright, sorry, let's just try to figure this out very briefly. Okay, let me try to drag it up here and do the second question. So for the second question, right? So it's about silver chloride. So silver chloride is insoluble already. Okay, they already mentioned it here, and even if they don't mention, you should know. So silver chloride can be made by the reaction between copper 2 chloride and silver nitrate. So compound 1 and compound 2. Describe how a student could prepare. So it's very simple. Okay, since this is insoluble salt, go back to this one. Sorry. Okay, if it is insoluble, you're going to use the precipitation method. And in this question, I'm going to copy this over there. Alright. In this question, they already told you about what your compound 1 and compound 2 is going to be. Alright. Compound 1 would be your copper 2 chloride, okay, or your silver nitrate, and compound 2 would be your copper 2 chloride. And when they ask you to describe how, you can simply try to write down the following procedures. Mix compound 1, copper 1 chloride, and then silver nitrate. Filter the insoluble precipitate, which is silver chloride. And that's all. You can follow this to answer that question. Very simple. Okay. Alright, so that's all for my video today. Hope you find it useful, and then try to write down the laboratory procedures for these questions by yourself. Alright, and we'll have an acid-base titration lab procedures in the next video. Alright, bye bye.